there, welcome back. Have you ever had a situation with a family member or friend where you thought you handled yourself correctly, only to find out they were disappointed, took offense, and were angry by how you handled the situation? On top of that, it manifested into a discovery of all the things that they found fault with about you, about how you show up in the relationship and how disappointed they are. And you're completely blown away by this discovery because you had no idea. How do you handle this? And can the relationship be saved after everything that surfaced? Well, that's what we're going to uncover today. And I'm going to share a story from a viewer, one of you, on a recent video. She had shared a comment in a little bit of a situation where she wanted me to do a video on a topic having to do with this, when we are misunderstood or when we thought we did something correctly only to discover that we didn't meet someone's expectations. I commented back and shared I would love to, but if she could give me an example, it would help. So I am going to use her example today. Let me share, like always, this is simply an example. So don't get caught up in the story. Often what will happen is I will get comments about the story. And I know that it's easy to want to help the person who reached out because she probably is going to watch this. But the message here is not so much about the story, but how the story is similar in nature to something you've experienced and some things that you can take away, maybe to help you navigate this situation and save a relationship if that is what you desire. To be able to resolve the issue in a way that creates harmony in a relationship that you once thought did have harmony, only to discover that it didn't. Let me read the story, and I'm going to change the viewer's name just out of respect. She did leave it on a public platform, so I felt that sharing it here was perfectly acceptable, but I am switching the name. So we're going to call the viewer Kate. Kate's brother and sister-in-law unfortunately suffered a miscarriage. Kate and the rest of the family were made aware of the sad news through a group text message sent by her brother. Naturally, it was hard for her brother and sister-in-law to suffer this loss. Now, Kate lives about 3 hours from her brother and sister-in-law. She decided to give them some space to grieve the first day after the news and had flowers delivered 2 days later. So 2 days after the unfortunate news about the miscarriage, Kate orders flowers and has them delivered to them. She also sent a text message that day conveying her thoughts and prayers to both and planned to call them that coming weekend, respecting their privacy. Now, she didn't tell them, I will call you this weekend. In her mind, I'll call them this weekend. I'll send the text message and the flowers 2 days out, but she wants to respect their privacy. The next day, this would be day 3, the day after Kate sends the flowers and the nice text message, her brother texted the family group thread saying he was disappointed that the family was not there for them. Because Kate felt she thoughtfully handled the news about the miscarriage, she was thrown off guard right by receiving this message. Kate believed in her mind that she handled the situation respectfully by respecting their privacy. Kate took this message from her brother in that group thread as a sign that space was clearly not what her brother and sister-in-law wanted. She sensed by what he shared they were angry, which caused Kate a lot of grief because she never intended to hurt them or come off as insensitive, and she doesn't feel any of the other families intended to either. But it was clear that her brother and sister-in-law had expectations which were not met. Since then, there have been a few back and forth conversations via text messages, but they have been uneasy, unsettling. Kate now feels like nothing she says or does will be correct. On top of that, Kate's sister-in-law listed many things she wasn't happy about with the family in the past regarding the parents and another sister, which these would be her sister-in-law's in-laws. So Kate's parents and sister and her brothers. So this is coming from the sister-in-law who had the miscarriage. Kate was shocked as she had no idea her sister-in-law felt this way. Kate is hurt by everything that surfaced in this unfortunate situation. Despite her hurt, she is willing to forgive and desperately wants to move on from this discord. How do you address this topic? Now again, before I unpack a couple of things, please don't get caught up in the story, because if you do, you may take it. We all have a perception, and there's nothing wrong with your perception. But this is by no means to minimize the impact of losing a pregnancy through miscarriage. This is simply a metaphoric story where you can think in your mind, yeah, I remember when something like this happened. Or perhaps you're going through a situation like this. I actually have a couple of clients who I hope see this video, because they are in a very similar situation where they completely were misunderstood and they felt they handled themselves in the correct manner, in a respectful manner, only to find out that they disappointed others, who now feel angry. And then on top of that, like I said, it manifested into all these other things that you're doing wrong. All this built up resentment and bitterness that they have towards you when you really just were acting very innocently. It's very painful. It hurts. No one wants to be on the receiving side of this. It's important to realize that we all operate differently and we all have our own triggers. Every one of us has triggers, and they are often coming from a place of pain, hurt, fear of abandonment, whatever it may be. But we are all walking around triggered by certain things. We can't predict what other people's triggers are. So when a situation like this happens and you feel good about how you handled the situation, you are saddened by the news, whatever that may be, you feel hurt for the other person, and you handle it in the best way that you know how based on the circumstances. Often we will handle a situation how we feel we would want others to handle it for us. And that makes perfect sense. It's important not to judge that, to not analyze that as right or wrong, good or bad, black or white, which often is what we do. You take the information that's been given to you and you handle it based on what you feel is best, with the timing that you feel is best, and how you perceive your expectations would be met. Now, when it's a situation like a miscarriage, maybe a loss of a pet, maybe a diagnosis, maybe the loss of a parent, loss of a job, a breakup, whatever it may be, if you haven't experienced what the other person is sharing, you only have your gut to go off of. You only have what feels comfortable for you to drive you to how you're going to handle that situation. You often feel a release. You feel like you did the right thing. So it makes perfect sense when you find out that you didn't meet their expectations and that they're disappointed and angry. You literally feel like you were socked in the jaw or punched in the gut. And it makes perfect sense. It's important not to judge yourself as if you did something wrong. You didn't. You did exactly what you thought was right for that situation at that time. You cannot predict what the other person, or in this case, people, are feeling. You can't predict that. And we are going to disappoint people. Think about yourself. Have you ever been disappointed by someone? Of course you have. We live in a fallen world. We are not perfect. We are living a human experience on this earth. So we are not perfect and we can't expect to be. This couple, Kate's brother and sister-in-law, wouldn't even have any idea how they would handle such disappointing news as the loss of the pregnancy because they haven't experienced it. So they're going through a period of shock. They're going through a traumatic experience of loss, confusion. Why did this happen? They are experiencing a number of emotions, and it makes perfect sense they would be. So when you think about your situations and the other person, we can't possibly know. We can predict, but we can't possibly know every single emotion they're experiencing. The key is just to do the best that you can. But now, how do you handle not only the initial situation that you didn't meet their expectations and they're hurt that you didn't, but now all these other discoveries have been made about how you haven't shown up the way they expected to. And this is where your relationship could be really tested. And it's something you're going to want to take the time to process and reflect on. And the last thing you want to do is give a knee-jerk reaction back, passing the blame back to them. Well, you don't do this. Well, you don't do that. That is never going to create harmony in this relationship if that is what you are hoping to achieve after you get through this discord. In this situation with Kate, it's clear that she wants to resolve this issue and be able to move forward. She needs to forgive. She needs to process this, and she needs to forgive. And then she needs to take what I shared today and decide how she's going to apply it to reaching out. Honesty and getting vulnerable is so important because we all know what it's like to have this stress and anxiety about a situation like this. So for Kate to come clean and talk to her brother and sister-in-law, maybe in person or on the phone, definitely not a text message or email, but come clean and share exactly what she put here. She feels bad that she hurt them. She realizes that she didn't meet their expectations. She handled it in a way that she thought, not knowing because she hasn't experienced a miscarriage that I know of. She didn't indicate that, maybe. But she handled it in the way she thought she would want others to respond and show up because she has nothing else to go on. And it's not wrong to bring up other parts of what the sister-in-law brought up about her unhappiness with how certain things have been in the family with the parents and the sister, but that's not about Kate. So she needs to keep that light to kind of stay out of that. There's a good chance that the sister-in-law is going to come back and the brother and share that they really weren't in their right mind. A lot of emotions were going on for them. And now they feel bad too. Often that's the case, is the other party feels bad because they were coming from an emotional state. And a big takeaway, write this down. Be very careful to reach out to anyone when you're in the heightened emotional state. You need to learn the art of sitting on it. I have a video called the 24-hour rule. Check that video out because The last thing we want to do is have regret and ruminate on how we handled ourselves because we were in an emotional state. Sit back and let those emotions come down before that impulsive knee-jerk reaction. Now, let's just say that through processing, maybe the situation you're in, if you're in a similar situation, you've processed, and all that surfaced about all these past disappointments that you put out there and all this pent-up anger the other person has against you, you may want to evaluate whether this relationship actually served you. Because now you've found that it certainly didn't serve them, that they came off as it did, but now that something happened in their world, all of a sudden, all hell is going to break loose. Take some time to reflect. Is this relationship serving for me? Are we tossing the ball back and forth? And when I say that, sometimes the ball is going to be weighted in one of the two parties more because they're going through some traumatic experience or grief. And that makes perfect sense. So right now they need you, but when you need them, are they showing up for you? And we assess our relationships. You do not need to stay in a relationship that does not serve you, that weighs you down, that creates stress and tension in your life. But it's important to look at all the dynamics of what that will look like if you sever ties with that person. How many other people are involved? So when it's a family, there's many people involved. So sometimes it's simply, now I establish boundaries with you. I don't sever ties with that relationship. I will share with you that I have very few relationships where I severed ties because of that situation. There's too many people involved. And while no one knows, I've just created boundaries with those people that bring me down, that maybe I have some past wounds or scars with, but no one needs to know that. Gossiping will get us nowhere, and that is a sinful nature, one that we definitely don't want to take part of. The enemy boasts. Satan loves when we gossip. So stay clear of that sinful nature and never get dragged into it. If you're in a friend circle, you need to think about that. If it's a one-on-one friendship and you're just feeling like there's just too much toxicity, too much drama, too much me, and never anything about you, it's all about them, you may consider severing ties or establishing boundaries. But if it's a group of friends, and this is kind of one of the obstacles sometimes with friend groups, is if you desire to step away from one bad egg, someone who's draining maybe to you but not everyone else because they trigger you. Remember, go back to, we all have triggers. Then you have to think about that because other people could be impacted. So I hope what I shared today helped you. Again, don't get caught up in the story. How does this apply to your life? Share in the comment section below if you've had a situation very similar to what I shared today, or if you're currently in the thick of it, and how you're navigating that. We learn by hearing other like-minded people's vulnerability in their stories. So please, I open up the comment section for you to share.